The emergency alarms echoed through the massive corridors of Meridian Station, their harsh sound breaking 4,000 years of peaceful silence. Deep in the station's heart, 12 different species gathered around a circular chamber that had not seen such urgent use since the Great Wars ended millennia ago. The air hummed with tension as translators worked overtime to convert worried chatter between races that rarely spoke to each other anymore. Admiral Kex's thermal suit glowed orange as he moved to the center podium, his species' natural heat making the air shimmer around him. The other representatives watched him carefully. Everyone knew that thermal people rarely left their hot worlds unless something truly terrible was happening. His 4 eyes scanned the assembled delegates before he spoke in the common tongue that all galactic citizens learned. Friends of the Council, what I'm about to show you will change everything we thought we knew about our galaxy. His words carried the weight of absolute certainty. The hologram projector activated above their heads, showing a 3-dimensional map of their spiral arm. Red dots appeared in the outer regions, pulsing like angry heartbeats. These energy signatures appeared 6 days ago. They are moving inward toward the core worlds at speeds that should be impossible. Our best scientists cannot identify the technology creating these readings. The power levels are beyond anything in our databases. Dr. Nira, representing the aquatic worlds, raised one of her webbed hands. Water droplets fell from her breathing apparatus as she spoke. Admiral Kex, have you considered that these might be natural phenomena? Perhaps stellar formations we have not encountered before. The thermal admiral's suit grew brighter, a sign of frustration among his people. Doctor, these readings show clear navigation patterns. They change direction. They avoid obstacles. They are ships, but ships unlike anything we have seen in 4,000 years. A cold silence fell over the chamber. Everyone present knew what had happened 4,000 years ago, though most preferred not to think about it. The humans had simply vanished overnight. Every colony, every ship, every outpost had gone silent at exactly the same moment across the entire galaxy. No distress signals, no evacuation messages, no explanation at all. Dr. Nira had spent her career studying the abandoned human worlds. She had walked through their empty cities where meals sat half-finished on tables, where children's toys lay scattered in playgrounds that would never hear laughter again. The humans had not been destroyed or evacuated. They had simply stopped existing in physical space, leaving behind only empty shells of their civilization. The Great Departure changed our galaxy forever, Dr. Nira continued, her voice soft with memory. Humanity was the most aggressive species we had ever encountered. They colonized faster than anyone thought possible. They adapted to environments that should have killed them. They built things that defied our understanding of physics. When they vanished, we told ourselves the galaxy was safer without them. Ambassador Tor from the deep ocean world spoke next, his translator struggling with the complex harmonics of his native language. Perhaps we were wrong to feel relief when they disappeared. The humans were violent and unpredictable, yes, but they were also incredibly capable. If something made them leave, maybe we should have wondered what that something was. The chamber erupted in discussions as different species argued about humanity's legacy. Some remembered them as dangerous warmongers who conquered worlds just because they could. Others recalled human traders and explorers who brought new technologies and ideas to peaceful civilizations. All agreed that the galaxy had become a quieter, more predictable place without them. Admiral Kex raised his temperature until the air around him crackled, demanding attention. While we debate the past, these unknown ships continue moving toward our worlds. Our defense fleets are already moving to intercept, but we must prepare for the possibility that we face a threat beyond our current capabilities. Dr. Nira activated her own holographic display showing archaeological data from human ruins. I have spent decades trying to understand what happened to humanity. Their final transmission spoke of a great journey, of becoming something more than physical beings. Perhaps they evolved beyond the need for material form. Perhaps they found a way to exist in dimensions we cannot perceive. Pretty theories. Doctor, Admiral Kex replied, his suit cooling slightly. But they do not help us deal with whatever is approaching our worlds right now. We need practical solutions, not philosophical speculation. The debate continued for hours until something unprecedented happened. Every communication system in the chamber activated simultaneously, overriding security protocols that had protected council meetings for centuries. The assembled delegates stared in shock as a simple message appeared on every screen in perfect, ancient English. "This is Captain Reed of the Terran Expeditionary Fleet. We're coming home." The silence that followed was deafening. Several delegates' breathing apparatus malfunctioned from sudden stress. Admiral Kex's thermal suit flickered between hot and cold as his system struggled to process what he had heard. Dr. Nira's webbed hands trembled as she stared at the message. "That language," she whispered. "Ancient human English, no one has spoken it for 4,000 years. Ambassador Tor's harmonic translator produced sounds of disbelief. "How is this possible? The humans are gone, dead, evolved, departed. They cannot simply return after so long." But even as they struggled to understand, the red dots on their tactical display continued moving inward. Whatever was coming had announced itself with humanity's voice, speaking words that should have been impossible. The galaxy that had known peace and quiet for 4 millennia was about to remember what it meant to share space with the most unpredictable species that had ever evolved. Admiral Kex looked around the chamber at his fellow delegates, seeing his own fear reflected in their alien features. "Send word to all council worlds. Tell them to prepare their defenses. Tell them that after 4,000 years of silence, humanity has returned. And pray to whatever gods your species worship that we survive the reunion." The emergency session continued through the night cycle, but everyone present knew that their peaceful galaxy was about to change forever. The age of quiet contemplation was ending, and the age of human unpredictability was beginning once again. The massive shape appeared without warning in the middle of the Davin system, materializing from empty space like a dream, becoming real. The human vessel defied every law of physics that the council races understood. It was impossibly large, easily 10 times the size of the biggest alien warships, yet it moved through space as if it weighed nothing at all. Defense Fleet Admiral Zane watched from his command ship as the mysterious vessel approached. His orders were clear but impossible to follow. Establish peaceful contact while maintaining defensive readiness. How do you prepare for war with ghosts that had been dead for 4,000 years? "Sir, the ship is not responding to our hails," reported his communications officer. "It's moving directly toward the inner system, ignoring all our attempts at contact." "What about weapons lock? Can our systems target it?" The tactical officer shook her head in confusion. "The ship appears solid on visual sensors, but our targeting computers cannot get a lock. It's like trying to aim at smoke." Admiral Zane had read every historical file about human technology, but nothing had prepared him for this. The approaching vessel seemed to flicker between solid matter and transparent energy. Sometimes it looked like normal metal and machinery. Other times he could see stars shining through its hull as if it were made of glass. "All ships, maintain distance but do not engage," Zane ordered. "Something tells me our weapons would not be very effective anyway." He was right. When one of his nervous captains fired a warning shot, the energy beam passed harmlessly through the human ship, without causing any damage at all. The vessel continued its approach as if nothing had happened. Then, without any communication, the human ship extended what appeared to be a docking tube toward Admiral Zane's flagship. The tube passed through the hull as if the metal were not there, then somehow became solid once it reached the interior. A doorway opened, revealing a softly glowing passage. Ambassador Tor arrived on the flagship within hours, his aquatic suit dripping as he prepared for the most important first contact in galactic history. Dr. Nira accompanied him, her scientific curiosity overcoming her natural caution. Together they stepped through the impossible doorway into humanity's domain. The interior of the human ship was unlike anything they had ever experienced. The walls seemed to shift between solid matter and flowing energy. Gravity worked differently here, pulling in directions that made no sense. The air itself felt alive with possibilities that their minds could barely comprehend. They found Captain Reed waiting for them in what might have been a bridge, or perhaps a meditation chamber, She appeared to be a young human female, but her eyes held depths that suggested she had experienced things beyond normal understanding. When she spoke, her words carried harmonics that touched their minds directly. "Welcome aboard the Wanderer," she said in perfect council standard, though her lips barely moved. "I apologize for the unusual entry method. We're still learning how to interact with solid matter again." Dr. Nira found her voice first. "Again? Captain Reed, what happened to humanity? Where have you been for 4,000 years? Reed smiled, but the expression held sadness mixed with wonder. "We evolved, Doctor. When faced with extinction, we chose transformation over death. We became beings of pure consciousness, existing in the spaces between reality and dream." Ambassador. Tor's translator struggled with concepts that had no equivalent in his language. "You mean you became energy? Light beings? How is this possible?" "Not energy exactly," Reed explained patiently. "We learned to exist in quantum states, in the probability fields that underlies all matter. We could experience entire universes of possibility without being limited by physical form. For 4,000 years we explored realms of existence that you cannot imagine." Dr. Nira's scientific mind raced with questions. "But why return now? Why give up such an advanced state of being?" Reed's expression grew serious, and the walls around them seemed to darken in response to her mood. "Because we were not the only ones to evolve beyond physical limits. Something else learned to hunt in the spaces between realities. Something that consumes not just matter and energy, but the very concepts that make existence possible." The ship trembled slightly, though. Whether from emotion or external force was impossible to tell. Reed continued her explanation while her crew moved around them with perfect coordination, speaking in abbreviated phrases that conveyed complex meaning. "We call them the Devourers. They are hunger given form, emptiness that seeks to unmake everything that exists. For 4,000 years we ran from them through dimensions you cannot see. We thought we had escaped, but they adapted. They learned to follow us." Ambassador Tor felt a chill that had nothing to do with his aquatic nature. "And now they follow you here?" "Yes. By returning to physical space, we have led them directly to the galaxy we once called home. That is why we came back. Not as conquerors, but as protectors. We cannot let them destroy what we once abandoned." Dr. Nira studied the impossible technology surrounding them. "Captain, your ship, your crew, how do you exist in physical space now? What is the cost of this transformation?" Reed's smile became even sadder. "The cost is everything, Doctor. To interact with solid matter, we must anchor ourselves to reality. But consciousness was never meant to be bound by physical laws. Each moment we spend in your dimension pulls us back toward the quantum foam. We can only maintain physical form for hours at a time before reality begins to reject us." The implications hit both ambassadors immediately. These evolved humans possessed godlike powers, but they were also unstable in normal space. They were refugees fleeing in cosmic threat, seeking alliance with species they had not contacted for millennia. "What do you need from us?" "Ambassador," Tor asked. "Your solidity," Reed replied simply. "Your permanent connection to physical reality. The Devourers can phase between dimensions at will, but they cannot touch what is truly anchored to material existence. Together we can fight them. Apart, we will all be consumed." As if summoned by her words, alarms began sounding throughout the ship. Reed's expression became grim as she looked at displays that showed information in dimensions the ambassadors could not perceive. "They've found us," she announced. "The first scouts are already entering your galaxy's outer rim. The real invasion begins now." Dr. Nira and Ambassador Tor exchanged glances, both realizing that their peaceful galaxy was about to face a threat that defied comprehension. But they also knew they had allies now, even if those allies were ghosts of humanity's past, wearing faces of its uncertain future. Reality began fracturing at the galaxy's edge, where the first Devourer scouts tested the boundaries between dimensions. Entire star systems flickered like candle flames in a cosmic wind, their light dimming as something hungry pressed against the fabric of existence itself. Emergency broadcasts flooded council communication networks as outer colonies reported impossible phenomena. Planets that existed only on certain days, suns that burned with cold light, gravity that flowed upward. Dr. Nira worked frantically in her laboratory aboard Meridian Station, trying to understand technology that challenged everything she believed about physics. Human devices covered her workbenches, each one a puzzle that operated according to laws she had never encountered. The equipment seemed to exist in multiple states simultaneously, solid when she needed to touch it, transparent when she needed to see through it. The quantum resonance patterns are completely unstable, she muttered to her assistant, a young scientist from the crystal worlds whose natural ability to process complex mathematics made him invaluable. These human tools exist in at least 7 dimensions at once. No wonder they can phase through normal matter. Her assistant's crystalline body chimed with confusion. Doctor, how do they control such chaos? Our most advanced quantum computers would overload instantly trying to process these calculations. Before she could answer, Captain Reed materialized in the laboratory, her form flickering between solid and translucent. The human looked exhausted, her earlier confidence replaced by visible strain. Dark circles shadowed her eyes and her hands trembled slightly as she fought to maintain physical coherence. Dr. Nira, we need to talk, Reed said, her voice carrying harmonics of desperation. Time is running shorter than I hoped. Dr. Nira gestured toward a chair, but Reed shook her head. I cannot sit. Physical contact with solid objects requires too much concentration. I can only maintain this form for another 20 minutes before I phase back into quantum space. The limitation shocked Dr. Nira. During their first meeting, Reed had seemed godlike in her capabilities. Now she appeared fragile, barely able to exist in normal reality. Captain, what is the cost of your evolution? What did humanity sacrifice to become what you are? Reed's expression grew distant as she remembered. Everything that made us truly human, Doctor. We gained the ability to think at quantum speeds and exist in pure consciousness, but we lost the capacity for genuine physical connection. We can interact with matter only briefly before our evolved nature reasserts itself. She gestured weakly at the equipment around them. Our ships, our technology, they require constant mental effort to keep them anchored in your dimension. Every tool we use drains our ability to remain solid. Every conversation we have with your people costs us precious hours of material existence. Dr. Nira's assistant chimed a question in his harmonic language, which the translator rendered as concern about strategic implications. Reed understood the meaning without translation, an ability that marked her as fundamentally changed from baseline humanity. You're asking about our military capabilities, Reed said. The truth is grim. We can phase into your reality long enough to fight, but each battle weakens our connection to physical space. The Devourers know this. They're counting on it. More human ships arrived each day, emerging from quantum foam like thoughts becoming real. Each vessel carried refugees from the cosmic threat, humans who had evolved beyond physical form but remained recognizably human in their emotions and desperation. Captain Tom, Reed's second in command, spent his precious material time explaining their situation to increasingly worried council representatives. The Devourers hunt by consuming possibility itself, Tom told Admiral Kex during a strategy meeting that had to be completed before Tom's 30-minute physical limit expired. They don't just destroy matter and energy, they unmake the very concepts that allow existence to continue. Admiral Kex's thermal suit fluctuated between temperatures as he processed this information. How do you fight something like that? Our weapons target physical objects. Our strategies assume opponents that exist in normal space. Tom's form began to flicker as his time ran out. That's why we need your people. Your permanent connection to reality serves as an anchor that prevents the Devourers from simply phasing away when attacked. But coordination will be incredibly difficult. The strategic challenges became clear as planning sessions continued. Human ships could strike from impossible angles, appearing inside enemy formations before disappearing back into quantum dimensions. But they could only maintain combat coherence for minutes at a time. Council fleets provided the stable foundation needed for sustained engagement, but they moved slowly compared to beings who thought at light-speed. Ambassador Tor spent hours in his aquatic chambers, contemplating the irony of their situation. Humanity had evolved beyond the need for physical existence, yet they required the partnership of less advanced species to defend material reality. Their greatest strength was also their greatest weakness. They are like gods who have forgotten how to touch the world, he confided to Dr. Nira during one of their planning meetings. Powerful beyond measure, but unable to remain in our dimension long enough to use that power effectively. Dr. Nira nodded grimly. I've been studying their physiology during Captain Reed's visits. The human consciousness is stretched across quantum dimensions in ways that should be impossible. They experience reality as pure information, as mathematical concepts given form, but material interaction requires them to compress all that expanded awareness back into linear time and three-dimensional space. The first major Devourer assault began without warning, reality warping around enemy scouts that appeared as writhing masses of hungry darkness. Council defense fleets engaged immediately, but their weapons passed harmlessly through enemies that existed partially outside normal space. Only when human ships phased into material reality could the Devourers be hurt, struck from quantum angles that bypassed their dimensional defenses. But each engagement cost the humans dearly. Captain Reed led the first assault herself, manifesting her ship long enough to deliver devastating strikes before phasing back into quantum safety. However, the effort left her unconscious for 6 hours afterward, her consciousness scattered across dimensions while her body struggled to remember how to exist. Tom took command during Reed's recovery, coordinating subsequent battles with grim efficiency. He explained the situation to increasingly desperate council leaders during his brief periods of material existence. We can win individual engagements, but we're losing the war of attrition. Every battle makes it harder for us to maintain physical coherence. The revelation forced impossible strategic decisions. How do you coordinate between allies who exist in different dimensions? How do you plan campaigns when your most powerful weapons can only fight for minutes at a time? How do you defeat enemies that consume the very concept of existence itself? Dr. Nira worked around the clock, developing hybrid technologies that might bridge the gap between human quantum manipulation and alien material science. Her breakthrough came when she realized that Council species' permanent connection to physical reality could be used to stabilize human consciousness, allowing them to remain material for longer periods. The solution required unprecedented trust between species that had barely interacted for millennia. Human crews would need to merge temporarily with alien ship systems, using their hosts' solid existence as anchors while maintaining their own quantum abilities. It was dangerous for both sides, but it offered their only hope of mounting an effective defense. As preparation continued, everyone understood that they faced something beyond conventional war. The Devourers represented entropy given purpose. The heat death of the universe accelerated and weaponized. Against such cosmic horror, the alliance between evolved humans and stable aliens seemed fragile indeed. But it was the only hope their galaxy possessed. The attack began with silence more terrifying than any explosion. Entire sectors of space simply stopped existing, leaving voids where star systems had burned for billions of years. The Devourers moved through normal reality like cancer through healthy tissue, consuming not just matter and energy but the mathematical constants that allowed physics to function properly. Admiral Kex commanded the largest fleet in Council history from his flagship positioned near the core worlds. His thermal sensors showed readings that made no sense, temperatures below absolute zero, gravity flowing backward, light that cast shadows of darkness instead of illumination. The enemy had arrived in force, and reality itself bent under their assault. All ships maintain formation, Kex ordered, though he knew traditional tactics meant nothing against opponents who existed partially outside normal space. Wait for human coordination signals before engaging. The hybrid battle plan developed by Dr. Nira required perfect timing between species that thought and moved at completely different speeds. Human ships would phase into reality at precisely calculated moments, strike with quantum weapons that could hurt the Devourers. then phase out before the enemy could adapt. Council fleets provided the stable anchor points that prevented the enemy from simply disappearing when attacked. Captain Reed's voice echoed through quantum communication channels that bypassed normal space entirely. Wanderer Squadron ready? For phase insertion. Council ships maintain spatial coherence on my mark. The first engagement happened across 7 dimensions simultaneously. Reed's ship materialized inside a cluster of Devourer scouts, her quantum weapons tearing through enemies that existed as writhing masses of hungry void. The aliens screamed in frequencies that hurt to perceive, sounds that carried despair from the spaces between atoms. Council ships opened fire the moment the Devourers became solid, their conventional weapons suddenly effective against enemies, locked into material reality by human quantum manipulation. The coordination worked perfectly for exactly 14 seconds before the strain became too much for Reed's crew to maintain. Phase out now. Reed gasped over the communication link, her voice strained by the effort of keeping her ship anchored in normal space. The Wanderer flickered back into quantum dimensions, leaving behind council vessels to finish mopping up the confused enemy scouts. But the victory came at a cost. Reed's consciousness scattered across multiple realities, and she remained unconscious for hours while her mind slowly reassembled itself. Captain Tom took command of the human forces, his own reserves already depleted from previous battles. The pattern repeated across dozens of star systems as Devourer fleets pushed deeper into council space. Human ships would appear without warning, deliver devastating attacks from impossible angles, then vanish before retaliation could reach them. But each engagement weakened humanity's connection to physical reality, making subsequent battles more difficult to maintain. Dr. Nira monitored the quantum resonance patterns from her mobile laboratory, watching in growing alarm as human consciousness became increasingly unstable. They're burning themselves out, she reported to Admiral Kex. Each phase insertion requires more energy to maintain. At this rate, they'll lose the ability to manifest in our dimension within days. The Devourers seemed to understand this weakness, adapting their tactics to exploit human limitations. Instead of quick strikes, they began sustained assaults that forced human ships to maintain physical coherence for longer periods. The strategy worked devastatingly well, leaving human crews exhausted and unable to continue fighting. Tom's ship, the Nomad, led the defense of the Kepler system, where 3 billion civilians waited for evacuation. The Devourer assault fleet was massive, reality warping visibly around their approach vector. Tom knew his people could not maintain physical form long enough to defeat so many enemies, but retreat meant abandoning millions of innocent lives. All human ships, prepare for extended phase insertion, he broadcast on quantum channels. We hold the line here no matter the cost. The battle that followed redefined warfare for both species. Tom's consciousness merged partially with the navigation systems of council ships, using their stable existence to anchor his own quantum state while maintaining his ability to phase between dimensions. The technique was dangerous and exhausting, but it allowed human ships to remain material for nearly an hour of continuous combat. Council captains found their vessels moving with impossible precision as human consciousness guided their actions. Ships that had never exceeded standard velocity suddenly darted between enemy formations like living things, while weapon systems fired with accuracy that defied their normal targeting limitations. The Devourers responded with tactics equally unprecedented, existing in states that were simultaneously solid and ethereal. They consumed the space around council ships, creating zones where physics simply stopped working. Entire vessels found themselves trapped in bubbles of non-existence, their crews experiencing the terrible sensation of ceasing to be while remaining conscious. Ambassador Tor's flagship became caught in such a zone, reality dissolving around his crew as they experienced existence from inside a Devourer's digestive process. The ambassador felt his thoughts beginning to unravel as the concept of individual identity was slowly consumed. Then, Tom's ship phased directly into the non-existence bubble, his quantum nature allowing him to function where normal matter could not survive. Tom's consciousness reached out to anchor the ambassador's fading awareness, providing the conceptual stability needed to resist complete dissolution. Hold on to who you are, Tom's voice echoed directly in Tor's mind. Remember your name, your purpose, your connection to the physical universe. The rescue attempt cost Tom dearly. Extending his consciousness to protect another being while maintaining combat effectiveness pushed his evolved nature beyond safe limits. His ship began flickering uncontrollably between dimensions as his mental cohesion weakened. Captain Reed's voice suddenly filled the quantum communication network. Her consciousness restored enough to rejoin the battle. All human ships, follow my lead. We're going to end this the only way we can. Reed's plan was desperate and probably suicidal. Instead of phasing in and out of reality to conserve their connection to physical space, the human fleet would anchor themselves permanently in material dimensions. They would become mortal again, trading their quantum immortality for the stable existence needed to coordinate effectively with Council forces. If we become fully physical, we lose everything that makes us more than human, Tom protested. We'll be trapped in linear time, limited to single-dimensional existence. We'll be what we were before evolution. Reed's response carried the weight of absolute determination. Then we'll be what we need to be to protect the galaxy we abandoned. Some prices are worth paying. The transformation began with a sensation, like dying in reverse. Human consciousness compressed from quantum possibilities back into the narrow channels of material existence. Ships that had existed in 7 dimensions simultaneously suddenly became merely metal and machinery. Crews who had thought at light speed found themselves limited to biological neural networks. But the trade-off provided exactly what the battle required. Human ships remained stable in physical space, their crews able to coordinate with Council forces for hours instead of minutes. The combined fleet struck the Devourer assault with perfect synchronization, quantum weapons guided by material precision cutting through enemies that had no defense against such hybrid tactics. The enemy fleet dissolved into component possibilities as their ability to exist was systematically unmade. The survivors fled into dimensions beyond perception, leaving behind only the slowly healing wounds in space-time, where reality struggled to remember how to function normally. Tom, S ship, drifted powered down in the aftermath, its crew struggling to adapt to permanent physical existence. Tom himself stared at his solid hands in wonder and grief, mourning the loss of quantum awareness while celebrating their victory. We did it, he reported to Admiral Kex. The system is secure, but we can never go back to what we were. The price of victory was higher than anyone had imagined, but the galaxy remained free. For now, 6 months after the last Devourer disappeared into the spaces between realities, the galaxy struggled to understand what it had become. The war had ended not with conquest or surrender, but with transformation. Humanity had returned from 4,000 years of evolution only to sacrifice their transcendent nature for the sake of species they barely remembered. Tom walked through the corridors of New Geneva Station, the first joint human-alien facility constructed since the ancient wars ended millennia ago. His footsteps echoed strangely in passages designed for both air-breathing humans and aquatic visitors, for thermal beings who required high temperatures and crystal entities who communicated through harmonic resonance. Every surface accommodated multiple forms of life in ways that would have seemed impossible before the Alliance. The returned humans were different from their ancestors in ways that went beyond their recent cosmic experiences. 4,000 years as beings of pure consciousness had left permanent changes in how they perceived reality. They thought faster than baseline humans ever could, processing information at speeds that impressed even the galaxy's most advanced artificial intelligences. They lived longer, their consciousness somehow resistant to the normal decay that claimed material beings. Most remarkably, they possessed intuitive understanding of quantum mechanics that allowed them to manipulate probability on small scales. But they had also retained their essential humanity in ways that both amazed and concerned their alien allies. Tom demonstrated this during his daily meetings with the Integration Council, where representatives from all species worked to establish new diplomatic frameworks. His approach to problems remained recognizably human, creative, stubborn, and occasionally reckless in ways that produced breakthrough solutions. The refugee resettlement program is ahead of schedule, Tom reported to Dr. Nira, who had accepted the position of Director of Human Integration. 347 humans have chosen to remain in physical form permanently. They're establishing colonies on 12 different worlds, each one adapted to local conditions in ways that showcase our species' old adaptability. Dr. Nira reviewed the settlement reports with fascination. Tom, your people are terraforming planets. In months instead of centuries, how is this possible? Tom smiled, an expression that still seemed strange on his solidified features. We remember what we learned during our transcendent period. We can't manipulate reality on the scale we used to, but we retained enough quantum awareness to work with probability fields. We encourage natural processes that might take millennia to occur, helping them happen in compressed time frames. The demonstration of human capabilities impressed council species while also making them nervous. These returned humans possessed technological understanding that surpassed anything in galactic databases, but they remained frustratingly unpredictable in their applications. They built cities that existed partially in normal space and partially in quantum dimensions, creating architecture that was both beautiful and impossible. They developed communication systems that transmitted information faster than light by routing messages through probability space. Ambassador Tor visited one of the new human settlements on Oceania Prime, a water world where returned humans had learned to exist in aquatic environments without genetic modification. He found Tom supervising the construction of underwater cities that glowed with their own internal light, powered by quantum fluctuations in the planetary magnetic field. This should not be possible, Tor observed, his translator struggling with concepts that had no equivalent in his language. You're manipulating fundamental forces as if they were construction materials. Tom paused in his work, his attention focused on probability calculations that existed at the edge of perception. We remember being pure information, Ambassador. Matter and energy are just different expressions of the same underlying mathematics. We can't think our way back into quantum godhood, but we can still nudge reality in directions it was already inclined to go. The settlement process revealed how much humanity had changed during their cosmic exile. Traditional human concepts of individual identity had become more fluid after millennia as collective consciousness. Returned humans often shared memories and experiences with casual ease, their personalities overlapping in ways that created group minds when necessary, yet they also maintained fierce individual autonomy that marked them as undeniably human. Captain Reed visited the material realm occasionally, her quantum consciousness manifesting briefly to observe humanity's reintegration. During one such visit, she met with the Integration Council to discuss long-term implications of the alliance. Most of my people remain in transcendent form, she explained, her translucent figure flickering between visibility and transparency. We continue to evolve in quantum dimensions, exploring realms of existence that have no physical equivalent. But we will never again abandon our responsibility to material reality. Dr. Nira had prepared extensively for this meeting, her questions focused on ensuring galactic security. Captain Reed, what guarantee do we have that humanity won't simply evolve beyond our understanding again? How do we maintain this alliance across such different forms of existence? Reed's smile carried depths of experience that spanned dimensions. Doctor, you're asking the wrong question. The real issue isn't whether humans will continue to evolve. We will, just as your species will continue developing in your own directions. The question is whether we can grow together instead of growing apart. The answer came in the form of hybrid research stations established at the galaxy's edge, monitoring points where transcendent humans worked alongside material species to watch for interdimensional threats. These facilities represented a new form of civilization, where beings of consciousness collaborated with creatures of matter to protect reality itself. Tom spent increasing amounts of time at these border stations, his role expanding from military commander to diplomatic liaison. His unique position as a human who had experienced transcendence but chosen material existence made him invaluable as a translator between different forms of consciousness. The universe is larger than any of us imagined, he reported during one of his briefings to the council. The Devourers were just one threat among many that exist in the spaces between realities. Our transcended humans encounter new challenges regularly, entities and phenomena that could threaten material existence if they ever found their way into normal space. The revelation transformed galactic politics permanently. The Council species realized they were not alone in the universe in ways they had never considered. Beyond their spiral arm, beyond even their galaxy, lay realms of existence populated by beings whose nature defied comprehension. Some were benevolent, others hostile, many completely alien to any form of life that evolved in normal space-time. Admiral Kex established the new Interdimensional Defense Force, combining Council fleets with human quantum capabilities to create the galaxy's first line of defense against cosmic threats. The Thermal Admiral had adapted surprisingly well to working with evolved humans, his species' natural aggression channeled into protective vigilance. "We face challenges our ancestors could never have imagined," Kex declared during the formal establishment of the Defense Force. "But we also possess capabilities they could never have dreamed of achieving. The partnership between material stability and transcendent awareness gives us strength beyond anything we could accomplish separately." Dr. Nira's research stations developed technologies that bridged the gap between different forms of existence. Quantum communicators allowed instant communication across galactic distances by routing messages through dimensions where distance had different meanings. Reality stabilizers prevented the kind of dimensional fractures that had nearly destroyed entire star systems during the Devourer War. Most importantly, consciousness anchors allowed transcendent beings to maintain extended contact with material reality without losing their evolved nature. The new technologies changed daily life for billions of citizens across Council worlds. Transportation networks used quantum tunneling to move ships between star systems in hours instead of years. Medical treatments incorporated probability manipulation to encourage cellular repair at unprecedented rates. Agricultural systems tapped into dimensional energy sources that provided unlimited clean power without environmental impact. But perhaps the most significant change was cultural. The galaxy that had known 4,000 years of peaceful stagnation suddenly buzzed with excitement about possibilities that stretched beyond imagination. Young beings from every species volunteered for training programs that would prepare them to work alongside transcendent humans. Universities established new departments dedicated to studying interdimensional physics and quantum consciousness theory. Tom found himself at the center of these cultural shifts, his experiences making him a symbol of successful integration between different forms of existence. He spoke regularly at educational institutions across the galaxy, sharing insights about the nature of consciousness and reality that came from having existed in both transcendent and material states. "Evolution isn't about leaving the past behind," he told a gathering of students from 15 different species at the Meridian Academy. "It's about incorporating everything you've learned into what you become next. Humanity didn't lose anything essential when we chose to return to physical form. We gained the ability to bridge two different ways of existing." The students asked questions that demonstrated how profoundly the galaxy had changed. Young crystal beings wanted to know if they could learn to exist in quantum states while maintaining their harmonic nature. Thermal youth inquired about consciousness temperatures and whether thought itself could burn. Aquatic scholars proposed experiments in fluid consciousness that would allow group minds to flow between individual identities. Captain Reed's visits became more frequent as the boundary between transcendent and material existence grew more permeable. The quantum humans had established permanent observation posts in normal space, staffed by consciousness fragments that maintained continuous awareness of material events while remaining connected to their transcendent collective. "We're learning to exist in multiple states simultaneously," Reed explained during one of her briefings to the Integration Council. "Individual humans can now maintain awareness across several dimensional levels, experiencing transcendent consciousness while remaining anchored to physical reality through quantum entanglement." The implications excited researchers and worried security officials in equal measure. Ambassador Tor raised the concern that haunted many council leaders. "Captain Reed, if your people can exist in multiple dimensions simultaneously, what prevents them from returning to their previous isolation? What keeps them committed to our alliance?" Reed's response carried the weight of species-wide decision-making. "Ambassador, You still think of commitment as limitation. We learned something during our 4,000 years of exile that we hope to share with all of you. True freedom doesn't come from escaping responsibility to others. It comes from choosing what you're willing to sacrifice for something greater than yourself. The monitoring stations at the galaxy's edge provided constant reminders of that greater purpose. Reports arrived daily about new dimensional phenomena, some curious and harmless, others potentially threatening to material existence. Transcendent human scouts encountered civilizations that existed as pure mathematics, creatures that swam through probability oceans, and entities that fed on the concept of time itself. Each discovery expanded galactic understanding of the universe's true nature while reinforcing the importance of their alliance. Material beings provided the stability needed to interact safely with cosmic forces, while transcendent consciousness offered the flexibility required to comprehend phenomena beyond normal physics. The first anniversary of the Devourer Wars was marked not with celebration, but with ceremony that honored both victory and sacrifice. Tom stood before a memorial constructed from crystallized spacetime, where the names of every being who had participated in the conflict were recorded in dimensions that would preserve their memory until the universe's end. We remember those who gave their lives. He spoke to representatives from every council species and transcendent humans who manifested to attend the ceremony. But we also remember those who gave up what they were to become what was needed. Evolution is always a form of death and rebirth. As the ceremony concluded, Tom looked up at stars that seemed different now, knowing that conscious beings existed in the spaces between them. The galaxy had awakened from 4 millennia of quiet contemplation to discover that it was part of a universe far stranger and more wonderful than anyone had imagined. The age of silence was over. The age of cosmic conversation had begun, and humanity had found its voice once again among the stars.